Now, to give you a very quick guideline or buyer's guide for MacBook Air, firstly, MacBook Air M2 definitely is better than MacBook M1 Air, for sure. That's no debate. But generally speaking, I would not recommend for you to buy MacBook Air M2 unless, number one, you've got enough budget and you've never owned Apple Silicon hardwares. Number two, unless you want to buy Starlight and Midnight Grey color. Number three, unless you want a MagSafe charger. Other than that, I don't really see any other reasons why one would want to buy MacBook Air M2 over MacBook Air M1. It's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, M2 does not significantly outperform M1. It's only better by 15 to maximum somewhere around 30% in terms of the performance, and that's a very negligible difference, especially for those who are using MacBook Air, not for very professional purposes but for everyday browsing, simple editing and content creation. M1 Air right now, it's still competitive in the market. It's with an excellent price, and to pay another couple of $100s for the premium that you get in MacBook Air M2, it might not actually be worth it in terms of the difference between these two products. Also, if you were to buy a MacBook Air M2, you can spend a little bit more and actually buy a MacBook Pro, which definitely has a clear difference in terms of the performance compared to M1 MacBook Air. So MacBook Air M2 is in a very awkward position between M1 MacBook Air and MacBook Pros that are out there in the market. So if you really need to buy a MacBook Air, you've never owned Apple Silicon devices before, the best recommendation is still go with MacBook Air M1. It's a monstrous device given such price, and you can basically do everything that you need as a student or as a small content producer with M1 MacBook Air. But if you are insisting on buying MacBook Air M2 for whatever reasons, maybe one of those three reasons that I mentioned previously, then my advice is do not buy the base model of MacBook Air M2, which is 8-core GPU, 8-core CPU, 8GB memory, 256GB SSD. Do not buy that if you're gonna buy M2. That's because M2 chip with the base model is so not worth this price, especially when Apple has admitted that they have deliberately lowered SSD performance for this model compared to M1. If you really want some difference in terms of the performance, you would at least have to upgrade your SSD to 512GB. To get the full improvement from M1, I think you must start off with the base model of the high-end version, which is 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU, 8GB of unified memory and 512GB of SSD storage, which starts at $2,350 if you don't apply education discount, which is very expensive. I wouldn't call this an Air, I would call this close to MacBook Pro. And if you have this budget, you should definitely go with MacBook Pro. The only reason why you might want to buy Air instead of Pro is because of its portability. But other than that, it's not that different. I was initially using M1 and I am not going to see a huge difference between these two, other than the screen getting a little bit bigger and the color and the fact that it has MagSafe. I would get exactly the same experience. Then you might ask, why did you buy it? Because it's just for my own leisure and fun that I bought it. But I would not recommend to general public, especially if you're a student. MacBook Air M1 is the best device. Anything that you buy with M1 MacBook Air, you will get more than enough service and experience. Let me know if you've got any questions about the device in the comments below. Thank you.